Welcome to Feed the Matriarchy. We're sisters, moms, and women who spent way too many years trying to shrink ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, we're done. Each week, we get real about food, body image, mental health, parenting, and how patriarchy has shaped the way we live in our bodies. Together, we'll unlearn the lies of diet culture, talk about what nourishment really means, and explore how taking care of ourselves is a radical act of resistance. This isn't a podcast about shrinking, it's about expanding. So let's feed the matriarchy. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Feed the Matriarchy. We are so excited to have you joining us today. I am with my permanent guest, Heather. She is continuing to join us. She has not bailed on me yet.
Not
Oh,
yet.
well, not yet. Oh, the
TBD.
sister. Oh, the sisters.
I know.
Today we are talking about privilege. This is a very important topic to us because Heather and I have been talking over the last couple of episodes about what an honor it is to have had women from all different places come on and talk with us and share their stories. And as two white, cis women, we couldn't help but sit here and think about the level of privilege that we have, in our spaces, how we operate in the world, right? And we wanted to devote an episode to, just like noting that, talking about that, putting that out there, and then following up with what we do with that, right? Because it's not just like
Yes.
we own the privilege. It's like, no, we see the privilege, we know that it's there, and now it is on us to do the work to utilize that to actually give more voice and more importance to like those marginalized voices that are out there, right? And what do we do to actually take our privilege and use it for good?
So feed the matriarchy, right?
Yeah.
Is holistic. It's the matriarchy, and the matriarchy is diverse. It's a mosaic. It's all different kinds of women and all different, in all different bodies with all different perspectives and all different lives and selves that they're bringing to the table. And so I think also just really wanting to honor that and work to, find more diverse voices and different perspectives and different kinds of women that we can bring into this space.
Yeah.
And then something that we've talked about in the last couple of episodes especially is creating space. Like, how do we create more space to feed the holistic matriarchy, to feed the whole mosaic of the matriarchy? How do we create space for that? And I think especially as two cis white ladies who are middle-aged, right?
Let's throw age in there, right?
Too, 100%. Because Deb was talking about the way that older women have been marginalized and othered, right? And how the word old has become to mean something bad. So she was deconstructing that, and that was really powerful for me to listen to as well. Because that's coming for all of us if we're lucky enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could throw in socioeconomic status in there. I mean, we weren't, I think that's actually a really interesting privilege because we were raised in a much lower socioeconomic status. We were raised on food stamps and, having government assistance. But as we've grown and as we've gotten older, we've become pretty solidly middle class.
I'm stable.
Yeah, we're solidly middle class. And there's a level of privilege with that, right? Like a
100%.
ginormous one. Yeah.
Like the episode that we'll release tomorrow with Jen Butler. I mean, I talk about how I was going down a path where I could have easily turned into an alcoholic. And I stopped myself because I was able to afford to pay for someone to watch my kid.
Yep, 1,000%. 1,000%. There's such level of privilege to being able to do that.
I mean, our mother couldn't have done that.
She could not have done that. No, there is no way.
you know.
She couldn't have afforded. I mean, no, you were my nanny.
Oh,
You were my
yeah.
childcare.
Yeah. Well, that was a mess.
That was a fucking mess all around.
I was
But thank you
mean.
for being that. You
I was
were
a
mean.
mean
It's okay.
babysitter.
But also, you were a 12-year-old that was put in charge. So,
Yep.
well,
I was
actually younger.
10.
You were a 10-year-old. Yeah,
I
you
was
were a
10.
10-year-old that was put in charge. But again, that was like that at that time. That was what like the where we were at in our socioeconomic status. But as we've grown and as we've changed, like we have a level of privilege to be able to just go to the grocery store and buy whatever I want. That's such a level of privilege, right? To have a grocery store right next to me that I can
Well,
go to.
yeah.
Like I don't live in a
That's
food desert. That's a level of privilege.
that's
Yeah.
selling like decent food.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there it just builds on itself. So you know, we've had people on our show who don't identify as white, but who by their own admission present as white, right? So like Ignacia and
Yeah.
Amanda, you know,
Yeah.
and I think we need to be very proactive in seeking out voices who also, you know, don't believe they present as white.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I think one thing what we were talking about now, so now we're just listing our privileges, right? We're like kind of going over them and noting them. And what we do next is that we understand that from that, like we have a platform where we need to be able to showcase and we need to be able to give voice to so many different marginalized communities. You know, like giving that like literal microphone to the
Yeah.
matriarchy. Yeah.
And taking it again in like a very holistic frame. So like we had Deb on talking about the elderly. We had Amanda on who's LGBTQ, who's native, who's in a larger body, who has a disability. We are hoping to secure a really close personal friend of mine who has lived her whole life with a chronic illness that's really impacted the way she moves through the world in very, very specific ways. You know? Yeah. So taking a big picture lens on all of this and just saying, it's not about like, oh, you know, I want to sort of like dog myself for like, you know, being privileged. It's also like, I just want to make sure that the space that I'm occupying recognizes how diverse the matriarchy is and like, and shows it, right?
Yeah.
And speaks to it.
And showcases it.
Because that's powerful. And that's what we're doing. We're inviting everybody into this space to say, hey, let's rise together. Let's help each other out as women, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think that when I was younger, like, well, when I was growing up, we grew up in the same household. Sort of, I mean, different time frames, right? So different experiences. But, you know, I didn't think about this when I was growing up. I mean, different time period, right? But also like just a really different lens with which we were viewing ourselves. So I didn't think about what level of privilege that like just like what I was guaranteed, right? Like what I was just guaranteed as a white girl, you know. It was like carte blanche, like I was guaranteed it, period. And it wasn't until I grew up and I deconstructed a lot of my faith and I actually, you know, I went to college, which is a privilege in and of itself, and I started learning about all the other voices out there. It wasn't until then that I started to like pause and think, you know, like, oh good God, like I've taken a lot for granted that I've like that I've been given, and I haven't done a good job of showcasing and like and making more room for the other
making
types
more room.
of people around me. Like I have actually done a very poor job of that. Johanna Culp, have done a very poor job of that. And, you know, since I was young, right, I was starting to kind of like recognize this stuff like in college. And I mean, I've really wanted to make sure that since then that I've stepped back in places that I need to step back in order to give space to like to those voices that need to be given space to, and you know, and then utilize any platforms that I have to try to broadcast those other voices, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And to seek them out, but not in a voyeuristic way, but just to say the world is a big place and I'm going to be looking to actively listen to and to look, you know, to look for and to to seek out perspectives that are different from my own by nature, by virtue of their circumstance or by virtue of their experience. I had a discussion with a friend once where they were sort of like affronted by the idea that, you could never really understand, someone else's perspective if they were a different type of person. And it's like they were sort of, I don't know, they were having a really, really bad reaction to that. I think they were just frankly having a bad reaction to recognizing that maybe they had grown up with a lot of like people clearing a lot of roads for them. They were having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that life had perhaps been easier for them by virtue of the way that they looked, right, and the body that they were in, and so they came at it from this whole sort of like, where are you saying you can never really understand someone? And I'm like, I'm not. That's not the point. The point isn't to like decide how much you can ever really truly understand someone. The point is to respect people. The point is to listen. And to say like, somebody else grew up differently than I did. Somebody grew up in a different body than I did, with a different set of experiences by virtue of being in that different body than myself. And what would make the world a better place is if maybe I shut up for a little bit and just listened.
I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know. And maybe in doing that, I can figure out how to see them more completely and how to work with them more holistically to create a better world for everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because I was gonna say that in and of itself is it's just such an important statement. Like, when we lift up voices that are not like our own, and when I say voices, I don't mean like on this platform. I mean in general. I mean in life, right? When we lift up the people that are different than us, what we are doing is we are like we're making the world more what it actually is, which is like a really diverse like diaspora of voices and places and perspectives. Like, we're making the world better. I mean, that is good. That is good. Right. It is good to have diversity. We need diversity. The world doesn't look, you said this in the last podcast, like the world doesn't really look like you and I.
Mm-mm.
What was the ratio of it? Like, how much of the world doesn't?
Well, so Gen Z will talk now. I love this language. They've reframed it from talking about like Black and brown people or people of color, all these other things that we've said in the past, right? Latinx or whatever. And they've started to just talk about the global majority, because the majority of humanity doesn't look like they were born in Northern Europe, because the majority of humanity wasn't born in Northern Europe. Yeah. This is actually kind of humanity-wise, like my whole like pasty-skinned, like really red. That's a product of like there being a lot of cloud coverage in a place that my ancestors came from and needing to get some vitamin D.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not what the global majority looks like. That's what it was that you were talking about, the global majority. Yeah. So it makes you think like, what, we're starting out this podcast. This is still the intro, 12 minutes in, to like what we're in it. Yeah, we're in it. Like, this is our privilege. We're naming it. Okay. What do we do with it? Right. When we had Amanda on last, a couple episodes ago, you said, we want to listen, like, and I think that is like one step. We want to listen. We want to give, and we're already talking about this. We want to give space to hear the perspectives, right? That's one thing that we want to do. And I want to do that here, but I also just want to do that in my life.
Yes.
Like, I deeply want to know where a person comes from and who they are, and, and what unique perspectives they bring and what wisdom they bring into the space, because they bring a very specific wisdom as a Latina woman. They bring they bring a very specific wisdom as a Black woman who's moved through this earth, like. But here's the really careful thing around it, right? I want to listen, and I want to make sure that I understand, right? I want to make sure, but I don't want to put the onus on that person to teach me.
Yeah.
Because that's the second part to it, right? That's the second part.
Yeah.
It's like, and you said this with Amanda too. It's like, we want to listen, we want to give space. And Amanda was so amazing to come on and talk to us about. We haven't even talked about I have thin privilege, right? We haven't even talked about that. Like, she came on to talk to us about what it was to be a woman living in a larger body in this, and how we could, better make space for her too. Another level of privilege. We want to listen, but we cannot put the responsibility just on, like, the Black or brown woman to teach us, right?
Right. Or the person in a larger body, or the person in a struggling with a physical ailment, or people call it a disability. Some people in that community like that word, some people don't. But somebody in a body that functions differently in the world.
Chronic conditions.
Chronic condition.
Yeah. So we want to be able to make space to listen, but we also need to do our own work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And, Amanda, I asked her, but she had been engaging with me about it. And then I asked her, after many, many back and forths with her, if she wanted to come on and talk about her own experience. And she said yes, right? And so she's wanting to do that. She's wanting to educate people, but, not putting it on others, like, seeking out the information myself. So a lot of what I've been doing over the past many years, since I kind of grew into this understanding myself, was be really deliberate in the voices that I'm seeking out to read or to listen to, right? And saying I am actively looking for perspectives that are different from my own, in every kind of way, right? Female perspectives, and some male perspectives too. I mean, we'll put that one on pause for the purpose of this podcast. But
I do agree with you on that. I'm just making a joke with
But I think that's been really important. But then other than that, I think about other ways that I can create space, and this one is tough, and I think you have to do it carefully. But something that I've also started to do, and I've gotten a little bit more comfortable doing, is people may not realize this given how I sound on this podcast or in my real life, pretty much the same person. I seem like someone who enjoys conflict, but I actually don't.
Gosh, that's really funny. Like, I do. You could get into conflict. It's a bluff. It's all like smoke and mirrors. It is. It's. Yeah.
I don't actually. Well,
it's a whole separate podcast, because I actually wonder. This is not. I want to come back to your original topic, but I actually wonder if you actually are more like you as Heather, when you were born, were actually more comfortable with conflict, but because of conditioning.
Yeah.
Especially conditioning as a woman, but conditioning as an eldest daughter, as the role that you had to play. Yeah, like you had to actually, that you became less and less comfortable with conflict because of the way that you had to kind of like form in the world, right? Yeah. People-pleasing behaviors, etc.
Yeah, it's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. But tell us about what you were, where you were going with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are things that are just said in mixed company, or maybe not even mixed company, maybe just with another person. I think I know where you're going with it, and I would say actually I think a lot of times it's said a little bit more not in mixed company. Well, I think a lot of times it can be both. It can be directly. You could be with a friend or with a relative or with whatever, another person, or it could be in a group of people. And there are statements that people make that you just know are not cool. Maybe they're commenting on someone's disability, or like some
size. People talk about size all the time.
Their appearance, right? They're commenting on their race. They're making a statement about their sexual orientation. Maybe I think right now, big thing is like trash talking transgender people.
Yep.
Right? That's the current like, transgender people and immigrants.
Well, it's
like those
who you're going to
whipping children of our society.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I was just going to say that. Who we're going to throw under the bus, who we're going to other in order to elevate. Yeah.
Yeah, in order to escape something horrible about ourselves that we don't want to have to face, which is how that stuff always goes down.
Yep.
And a lot of times it's easy. The thing you want to do is just try to switch. A lot of times an impulse can be to just switch the topic.
Yep.
Oh, let me figure out a way out of this. Let me figure out a way to switch the topic. So, you can stop being the person that I'm talking to will stop with their bigoted whatever, or they're incorrect, maybe,
they're transphobic. Let's just name it like as a transphobic, racist, or something, some sort of statement like that.
Fatphobic, anti-fat,
an ick statement, whatever statement.
An ick statement.
Yeah.
And I've decided that that I can't do that. That I have to speak up, that I have to say something. And I have to be cool about how I say it. My goal is to change minds, right? Whether it's that person or someone else who's listening, that's my goal. Yeah. But there's a secondary goal that I've become aware of that's very acute, and I think you don't realize it, but you also just don't know who's listening. You don't know what child in the room is struggling with something. Yeah. Maybe there's a kid in the room, or there's another person in the room who's LGBTQ and nobody knows.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another person in the room or in the space who's got a disability or something that is inhibiting their body, right, and making it difficult for them to walk through the world. Yeah. Maybe there's another person in the world. Because
disabilities are that's not
you don't always
seen,
see
right?
them. You don't always see them. You don't always know. Maybe and by challenging that, I create safety and space for that other person. And 1,000%. I used to think, I used to kind of buy into this idea like, oh, this is just liberal performative, whatever. It's bullshit.
No, it's not.
Yeah. When you speak up, you create the conditions for someone else to feel like they have a right to exist.
Yep. 1,000%.
In the world and in that space. And that's what that is.
That's what that is.
And whether or not, I'm not, whether we're going to, I think it's a right-wing reactionary conservative thing to say, oh, it's just liberal performative, whatever. I don't care. You don't know my heart. You don't know why I'm doing it. But when I did it, I created safety for someone else. And that's what I know is the practical action and outgrowth of it. Yeah. So, so I think there's that. And I'll tell you, like, I've done it, and it's been uncomfortable. And I'll give a couple of examples. So one was, a few years ago now, I was with a really close friend and her kids. I was at her house for a bit. She's a really lovely family and really lovely kids. They were younger boys, kind of like pre-teenish, right, in that space. And they were having a hard time. They moved into a new school district, and there was a kid in that school district who was just like a mean little bully kid, probably struggling at home himself. Yeah. And he was sort of picking on one of them, and he was calling one of these boys a girl, and it was not a transgender girl. That he was calling her, and he was
love that, like, the negative that you can make is like calling somebody a girl too. You're
right.
So problematic. And again, he's learning. This bully kid is learning that from somewhere.
He's getting this from somewhere. Someone's bullying him, whatever.
Yeah.
And so they were, and they were, it was like painful for them. And so they were trying to figure out, they were like defending themselves, and they were like, well, he's really chubby. He's really fat. He's a big fatty. And that was their response to him. And I understood
Make fun
why.
Of their body size. Yep.
I was like, they're trying to defend themselves. They're feeling, targeted themselves. But I just stopped and I just said, hey, I'm fat. And like
they just stopped in their tracks.
Oh, they stopped in their tracks because they're good kids. They're good kids. Yeah. They stopped in their tracks and they were like, oh no. And I was like, yeah. I was like, would you talk about me like that? Would you like say mean things about me to your parents? Yeah. And they were like, we would never ever do that. Like, they were like, no, what do you mean? We would never do that. And I was like, good.
Yeah.
And then I said, you can't do that. You can say he's mean. You can say he's a bully. You can say he's unkind. You can say all kinds of things about him. Yeah. But I said, you cannot make fun of the way he looks. It's never okay, and it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000%.
You can't ever do it. And and then I felt kind of bad. I was talking with my friend later because these are her kids, right? I'm like, well,
that's one of those things that's hard thing because you're like, am I going to step into like a parenting situation? But not
she wasn't there.
Yeah, she wasn't there.
And I said it to her later. I was like, hey, I just need to let you know. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you did that. And I'm so glad it was you who said it because it carries a different kind of weight. And but I've done the same thing in other extended family environments that are really uncomfortable. But talking about LGBTQ people, talking about Black or brown people. I was in a situation like well over a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half ago, where I was with a group of white people. They were all white, and I think they made assumptions that all the white people in the space agreed with them. And there
Exactly.
was it was Black History Month, and a commercial came on for Black History, and they just started making fun of Black people.
Yeah.
Like they were just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, can you believe it? You know, it's so dumb. What have Black
Why do we
Americans
have to have a whole month?
ever
Yeah.
done for us?" You know, and I
Fuck
couldn't.
that
I know.
shit.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't. I mean, I should have believed
You're like,
it.
am I being punked right now? Like what?
I
But
know, a little
no,
bit.
no.
I was
And that's
like,
why I said so, a lot of times like these conversations happen like actually in a more
yeah.
homogenous way because they're just like, I'm assuming that you're on my side. And
I'm
you're like,
assuming
fuck
you're on
that.
my team. I'm assuming, and I thought to myself,
That.
this is very, very uncomfortable. I don't know these people well enough. But
Yeah.
if I don't speak up right now, they are going to assume that I am on team bigotry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
not.
And we're the people that need to be speaking into
You
that.
know, and I just
Yeah.
called it out. I stood up and I was like, well, I think this is really inappropriate and really terrible,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you
Yeah.
exactly why.
Yeah.
And it caught everybody out. You know, I don't know if I changed that person who said its heart and mind at that moment, but I'll tell you
No.
what I did. I made it uncomfortable for them to be bigots in a public space.
I love the phrase, and if
You
you're
know?
listening to this and you're struggling with what to do, I love the phrase, what do you mean?
What do you mean? What
Because
do you mean?
somebody has to get even a little
mean?
deeper into what they're saying. They want to be like a little like wink, wink, nod, nod. And I'm like, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Name it, motherfucker.
Say it.
Name it. You're gonna
Say
say
it
it,
out loud.
because I'm sitting there, and you know, I've named all these like identities that I occupy, and so somebody might be like, well, I'm gonna make fun of immigrants to her. They don't know my work with immigrants. They don't know how deeply connected I am to the immigrant community.
Yeah, you
They
are.
just look at me and they see, I could cry actually. They just look at me and they see a middle class white lady. I care so deeply for my immigrant friends. Like, so if somebody's gonna say something like negative about immigrants in front of me, I'm gonna make them say it. I'm gonna make them say all of it, and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna go, yeah, I'm gonna tell you all the reasons that you're wrong.
Right.
I'm
No,
gonna.
I think
but
I think calling it.
I-
Yeah,
yeah.
calling the cards in. Yeah.
I get protective,
Yes.
but I think that that's what I need to do, because if somebody's gonna say it in that space and think that it's going to be okay because I'm a white lady just like them, then
Yep.
they get to hear from me, not from the immigrant community, because it's not always safe, right?
No,
They get to
it's
hear
not.
it from me
Yep.
why they're wrong.
Yep.
I think one, like, just to kind of recap what we're saying here, like, our job with the privilege that we have is to listen to the marginalized voices. But two, and this is a big one, well, and then two is actually learn, like educate ourselves. Three is the big one. Our job is to get vocal in
Yeah.
our spaces where people are tongue in cheek and wink, wink, nod, nod with all their isms and otherings, right? It's to get
Yep.
vocal in defense
Yep.
of the marginalized voices in our community.
That's right. And can I just say, I just want to pull up and just say, like, look, I have grown a lot as a person. And I don't think there was ever a time in my life where I wanted to be a bigot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was. I don't think I ever wanted that. But I think there was a time in my life when I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just the culture I was growing up in, the soup I was growing. No shade on my mom and dad, who also were wonderful people and never taught. But I think it was just the cultural frame that I was swimming in. Just middle class, middle class, lower class, working class, poor, white, culture at the time. And that was just the soup that you were in.
Yeah,
and,
the air you breathed. It's like the way we talk about diet culture. It's just the air you breathed, right?
It was the air you were breathing. And I had people, as I was growing up in high school and in college. I went to a weird conservative evangelical Bible college where I had a lot to, there's a lot to unpack there.
Lot to another podcast episode.
Yeah, it's another podcast. And the people I keep in touch from that space, we've all kind of found each other again, and we managed to get out, in our own way.
Yeah.
But then I think in graduate school, postgraduate school, living in Washington, D.C., postgraduate school, and then going to graduate school, there were people at every step of the way who were willing to challenge me, who, when I said something, and they didn't say it to me mean, they weren't cruel, they knew that I wasn't intending to be rude or bigoted or racist, but they would push me. They would push back at me. They would say, "What do you
They
mean?
would.
Why are you saying that? What do you mean
Where
by that, Heather?
like what's your research to back that up?
Or
What's
why
your
do you
research to
think
back that
that?
up?
Or
Yeah.
why would you use that kind of phrase? What do you
Yeah.
mean by
Yeah.
that?" And
Yeah.
it was uncomfortable for me. There were times when I was like, I felt bad, or I felt awkward, or I felt bad about myself, but you know what? Like, yeah, that's part of growth. That's part
Yeah.
of growing up. That's part of
Yeah.
learning, and that's part of becoming a better person and a better person in the world. Is like, it's gonna have to, you're gonna have to feel a thing, and you're gonna
Yeah.
have to sit with that feeling for a little bit and work it through. And I actually
Yeah.
wrote to somebody recently. I'd lost touch with her, but it was a roommate of mine in graduate school who did a lot of this with me. Even in graduate school, my first year of graduate school was a big breakthrough, I think, for me. I wrote to her and I was like, "Hey, thank you for challenging
Yeah.
me, because I
Thank you
see
for
now
moving me
that
along.
you were right.
Oh,
You
that's
were right."
beautiful. That's so vulnerable, right? It's so
Yeah.
vulnerable. It's so vulnerable to sit in a space and like be challenged on these
Yep.
things, and then actually be able to come back and be like, yeah, I
You
fucked
were
up
right.
there. You
And
were right. I needed to
she
grow.
changed my life. She made me a better person.
Aw, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Because she
That's
was
beautiful.
willing to tell me that I was wrong. And she did
Yeah.
it in a way that she wasn't mean, but
Yeah.
she was like, "You're wrong about that." And it was painful for me to hear that. It was hard. And
Yeah.
it didn't change my mind sometimes immediately. Sometimes I thought, "Oh, well, whatever, they're just being assholes," but it stayed with me. It sat with me.
Yeah.
And I changed. And one of them was a graduate school friend and roommate who I lost touch with, and then I wrote years later. I found her address and I wrote her and I said, "You were right."
Yeah. Yeah, and the deep vulnerability that it takes to come back and do that work yourself and undo and redo like
Yeah.
how you believe things. And I think it's really important even to shift it in our own mind that like we're creating a confrontation or a conflict when we choose to like engage with somebody around this stuff, and to say like, have you really researched it? Do you really understand, or share parts of like, parts of ourselves when we're trying to educate around it? I don't necessarily even think it's a conflict. I mean, I think it is. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not trying to like gaslight ourselves with it, but I think if we can shift it for ourselves, and just in terms of like, we're trying to help somebody broaden their perspective a
Yeah.
little bit, trying to ask like, have you really done the research on it? Have you really, are you really sure that all this is accurate, right?
Or do you know, when you say that, how it lands with someone else? And are you intending
Yeah.
it to land that way?
Yeah.
Do
Do you
you
know what
mean it?
do you know? And some people might be like, yeah. And then, and it's like, peace be with you.
Well, or like,
All good.
"Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think you're wrong," and then "Peace be with you,"
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
maybe it
Yeah.
comes around on them. People change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to believe that people change. I changed, and I have to believe they
Yeah.
can. And I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I think it's a part of my work in the world, not to be like aggressively, like, coming at people all the time, but when I say that I stand for these beliefs and that I mean them, and that I
Yeah.
want to create a better world where
Yeah.
everybody feels, you know, like they have a place here. That
Yeah.
that that part of doing that work is being willing to have the conversation, and sometimes it's hard.
Yep. We got to get uncomfortable. We have to keep getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's not easy also to be a person that has, has been marginalized for so long. Right. So this is what it is to use like your privilege, right?
Yeah.
Get into the uncomfortable spaces.
Yeah, and to be uncomfortable. Yep.
Yep.
It's part of the
Yeah.
thing.
So it's interesting because we didn't set it up like this, but I'm just thinking through it, right? It comes from personal, right? It's like our own personal like work or like learning, right? And then it's like it's in relation, right? It's like the people around us, if they have derogatory statements that are said, like educating others around us, right? It's having those uncomfortable but necessary conversations where we push people to really think through things. And then I think the next shift, right, is like, where do you give your money? Where do you spend your time? Like it's what businesses do you support? Right? So it's like but I do think that I think we need to be doing all of it. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's everything. I think it's our own personal shifts. It's the work that we do in our communities, right? And then it's like what businesses am I supporting? Am I supporting like trans affirming businesses? Cuz that's what I want to do, right? Am I promoting like immigrant businesses? Am I promoting Black and brown businesses?
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to do too.
Yeah. Are you creating, what space are you creating? In your capitalist society purchase power. Right?
Yeah.
What space are you creating, for people?
Yeah.
And then you vote with your dollar. A lot of the time
1,000%.
do. You vote with your dollar.
1,000%.
You say this is what I believe, is what I'm going to support. I mean, it gets tough. It gets, there's like a world in which we're all living in this commodified society, and if we can't boycott everything, we wouldn't function. There's no, you can't be. There's no pure whatever. You're going to have to go live in the woods by yourself. But I think just being intentional, when and where you can, right?
So I feel this a lot, and I hear it from people a lot, and I understand it, and as myself can relate to it. You can do some things. You can't do everything. You can do some things. Like you may not be able to with your purchase power, like completely get away from big conglomerates, but you can shop local when you can. You can research your businesses and see who you're supporting.
Yeah,
you can.
Yep.
Not everything.
Yep.
Not everything.
I'll tell you what, man. Having that rainbow flag in the window, it means something to me. I got family. It means something to me too. I got family in that space.
Yep.
And knowing that business is safe for my family, that they are not going to marginalize and abuse them or terrorize them, that matters to me.
1,000%. Matters to me too.
So
matters to me too.
Go.
Yeah. So I think that it's an acknowledgement, but it doesn't just stop at an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement of our privilege, and then it's like, what are you going to do with it?
Yep.
Let's close ourselves out here, Heath.
Yep.
Let's think about because we asked this question of our guests, like, what did you have to unlearn in order to take up more space? I'm going to shift it for us. Like, what did we have to unlearn in order to give others
more space,
room to take up space? Yeah. What do you think? I mean, this is our whole episode, but like, and this is what I do to everybody.
Yeah.
What did you have to unlearn? I'll start.
Yes.
I had to unlearn, like, cause I think that one thing that I first learned when I was thinking about privilege is I was thinking it's like sort of like misogyny, right? Like I was like, oh, well, I'm a woman. So, like I've been marginalized. And I think I had to unlearn, I mean, yes, I thought it was Feed the Matriarchy. That's why we're here, like to grow like the women voice. But I also then had to unlearn that was like the pen that was it. Like I had to then sort of like relearn, like, yeah, and look at all these other, it's intersectionality. Look at all your other privileges. So you're a woman that's marginalized, but you're a white woman.
Yeah.
There's privilege. Look at your socioeconomic stuff. Look at your thin privilege. Look at your able-bodied. Yeah. Look at all your privilege. Okay. So yes, like, Yes and is really like where I in order to then like, and this is like work that I was doing all throughout like my 20s, right? Like, okay, so where are you gonna now, Johanna, where are you gonna make more voices? Dude, I'm still learning it. I like to paint it as a 20s. I'm 40s, like, and I'm still learning it. How are you going to make space for others more and more? Right?
Yep. Yeah, I think for me there are two things, and I've talked about both of them already on the podcast. But the two things for me are, the first is that it's not some kind of liberal bullshit to just call a card in, to call a situation in, to just say this is not okay, this conversation's not okay, I don't agree with what's happening right now, I don't agree with that statement, what do you mean, like to not let it pass, to not and that the work that I need to do is to not let it pass, especially with my family. Yeah. And especially with anyone I consider to be a friend, 100%. Yeah. And in fact, actually, like, I owe it to them to not let it pass. And, and then I think the other thing is that I'm a naturally curious person, and there's a reason I'm doing this podcast with you. I mean, I like to talk to people. I'm always like, tell me about this and tell me about that and tell me your story. But with somebody who has been marginalized and othered for most of their life by mainstream society, tell me your story can be pretty aggressive, for them. And they get to decide who they want to tell that story to and how they want to tell it. And I don't get to demand it. And I don't get to, I don't get to ask if they want to tell it. Like Amanda, if they want to come on and tell it, then they can come on and tell it. But it's not mine to ask. And if I'm curious and I want to know, then I can read. I can Google. I can Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can educate
yourself.
Myself.
Yep. 1,000%. Yeah. That's our work. It's personal.
Yep.
And then it's in our sphere of influence. And then it's like in activism.
Yep.
Right? And that's what we do here.
Yep.
That's how we unlearn and relearn.
Yep. Yeah. And I okay, I'm going to give you 3. And then the third one is that it's okay for me to be wrong. It's okay for me to have made a mistake. It's okay if I say something or do something or engage in something that's incorrect.
Yeah.
That's bigoted and I didn't intend it to be, but it is. It's okay for me to go, you know what? That was. And now I know better and now I'm going to do better.
Yeah. 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 Get uncomfortable in this.
It's okay to be uncomfortable. Yeah. It's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, because then you can shift and learn and grow.
Yep.
Right? It's not just the uncomfortable. It's the uncomfortable brings us into spaces to grow.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
That's what we're doing here.
All right, let's grow. Let's feed
Let's grow.
the matriarchy.
In all ways.
In all ways. Good.
Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Talk soon. Hey, thanks for listening to Feed the Matriarchy. If today's episode sparks something in you, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to take up more space. You can follow along on Instagram at Feed the Matriarchy Collective for more conversations, resources, and sister-style real talk. Until next week, stay hungry for truth, compassion, and liberation.